groggy this morning. That's a little late. So we got a lot to get through, a lot of good stuff, and looking forward to hearing some of your experiences. And we got, before that, we have another treat this morning. We got Sarah Gustafson coming up to share her story. You have papers and stuff, Sarah?
I have a laptop.
Yes. I'm going to just call you up, Sarah. Yeah, Sarah! Her desire to tell her story, your story, through the Word of God. We just ask that you invite her and bring the words through the Word of God that you have for us. We just thank you so much for all you've done in her life. And we just praise your name, Lord God, in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. It'll come. This is the important.
I'm nervous. This is my first time ever doing this.
It's on.
Pretty good, actually.
Hello? All right.
You got it, Sarah. Let's go.
It'll pop out, right? It always does. Okay, so I was never raised in church. I was born and raised in several parts of the Iron Range, but I've never lived in one home more than 6 months to 2 years my entire life, which still holds true today at 31 years old. Though always being in the same area, I never truly had felt that I belonged to one singular place or community, and if I did, it was very short-lived. And I was out to start again in another. I considered myself to be a wanderer of people, places, and life experiences. I used to view this as a curse, but today I see it as a blessing. I'm the middle child of 5, and the only one who has a biological father I do not know and do not share with another sibling. My older siblings have their dad, who they lived with, and my little twin brothers have theirs, who was like a surrogate father to me almost my entire life in my biological father's absence. So I do consider him to be my dad. I've gotten to be the youngest, only child, and oldest throughout my childhood. It's kind of cool. My mom and dad broke up shortly after my little brothers were born when I was about 5. My family faced many hardships, especially the first few years of them breaking up. My mom would meet a man, we'd end up living with him, and ultimately abuse and chaos would unfold. We would move, and the cycle would start again. Eventually, we moved to Tower when I was in 4th through 6th grade. So from then on, my mom always did it on her own. Like there was no other boyfriend we moved in with, which was good. But being in Tower was some of the best years of my childhood. I did not have many friends. I rarely got new clothes or things. I got made fun of because my clothes smelled like cigarettes. My little brothers had a speech problem, so I got made fun of for them too, and they did too. And I also got made fun of because my mom always left us home alone when she would work at the bar. She was a single mom and could not afford childcare for us. So to me, I always thought it was a normal thing. Like since I was 1st grade, you know, I've been watching my little brothers pretty much. My mom always missed my school concerts. I would have to walk home by myself at night from the school after suffering the heartache of staring into a crowd, scanning in hopes I would see her or someone else I knew. What made living in Tower so special for me is the 3 best friends I made with 2 I'm still in contact with to this day, and they're like sisters to me. It made me feel so blessed to have this extended family in my life. It made being dirt poor feel like I was wealthy, and the void of loneliness I felt from my mom always being gone and not showing up for me seemed non-existent. We were inseparable. The oldest friend of our group was part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Sedan and was attending youth group. I went with her once to youth group, but felt out of place due to being so much younger than everyone else. So I went to church with her instead the next time, for the first time. And I remember feeling so uplifted when we were singing. And now when I go, I still feel that same way. It kind of takes me back there. She and another friend of hers, of the same age, they taught the Sunday school there up in the attic to the younger kids. So the next time I went to that. And pretty soon I was getting our other two friends to go with. And so that kind of happened. That started happening like the summer before 6th grade. So I didn't get to be a part of that for a very long time. But that winter, my mom was going through some struggles of her own and decided to get me and my little brothers and herself baptized there. So then that summer, struggles became harder. We did not have electricity for maybe a month or so. We had to move back to Leonidas and with my dad, who did take us in, and I had to leave the one place and people I loved behind. At my new school, in Evelyn Gilbert, there was a girl who was much more popular than me, but also did not really click into the popular girl group. And for some reason, she wanted to be friends with me. This girl I followed everywhere, and she would always get me into so much trouble. She smoked cigarettes and would always tell me that I would soon too, eventually. Which I always denied and said, no, that won't be me. And every time she'd say that, I'd always think it was just less than a year ago. I was playing Bratz dolls and going to Sunday school with my friends, riding bikes, just being a kid. I'd never smoked cigarettes, I'd never tried drugs. So I stayed the girl who just hung out with the troublemakers, always being the outcast or punching bag, but found comfort in the acceptance for some reason. And I wanted to be like this girl, accepted by all like she was. I was looking for acceptance in the wrong places. One day we're hanging at the skate park, and I finally get the attention of a guy on a BMX bike. Yeah. I had just turned 13 at this time, and he was 16, and a school dropout. Told me how beautiful I was, and we started hanging out. We dated for maybe 2 weeks, and it ended in my innocence being stolen from me. So the next day I did finally ask to try that cigarette. And he ran away to Seattle, and I slowly started to lose my sanity. For 9th grade, we moved back to Tower once again. I got bullied out of Tower School because I was struggling with depression, so maybe I dressed more black, like emo kid, you know? So I did online school for the rest of the year, stayed locked in my room by myself, making friends online, diving into deep depression, and it was at this time where in my life I started to experiment with self-mutilation. I would start with pouring candle wax on my hands and arms, and I would progress to sometimes make small cuts. My mom was always working at Fortune Day, so she never really knew the extent of my depression. That summer, electric went off again, actually in the winter too, before the summer. But in the summer then we didn't have water either. My mom lost her job. We returned to my dad's again. And then I went to East Range Academy at this time. This school was awesome. I fit in very well there. Things were going great. And then I met the father, who would be the father of my oldest son, Noah. I got pregnant in high school, but honestly it was the best thing for me. I quit cigarettes and went from straight D's and C's to B's and A's. I was like no fun Sarah, basically. But we had a brutal breakup when my son was almost 1 year old. That turned mutually physical. I never did try to go after him for child support. I never had my biological dad growing up, and I had very little family. So family's always been important to me. So I was always open to working things out with him on our terms. I never thought halfway through my senior year, I would be basically going through a divorce, and he was taking me to court for custody. He went to legal aid, so I couldn't, even though my family had so much less than his. They had a lot more money, but he was able to do that. So court's coming up soon, and my mom watches Noah, and I end up at a small party at another classmate's house with my then boyfriend I was hanging out with. and I want to numb the stress and pain of it, so I tried drinking for the first time. I black out because I didn't realize you probably should not slam 2 solo cups of Carb Pop and Dr. Pepper. Yeah, I don't remember much, but I remember my boyfriend smoking something that wasn't cigarettes or weed. It was weird. And so the next day, I had asked about it because I could tell he was hiding, and his friends were like hiding it from me, and I confronted him, and then his friends told me to just tell me. So they did. They told me they were smoking meth. I was pretty upset because, you know, what you hear in school and everything. I had no idea about this drug. I was mortified. But then the next day, I asked them, does it make you not feel as much? And I decided to try it. I was instantly hooked, but not yet full-blown addicted. I did not know at this time what court entailed, that in the end, the judge made us do early neutral evaluation, where we used mediation and made our own plan, which was the plan I wanted all along. To be 50-50, no child support, just pure co-parenting, and always family first before daycare. I didn't trust in God or the process, and I gave into temptation and instant gratification. I was lured into darkness, and I believe it in my heart that the devil tried to steer me away from God the moment I decided to learn about him when I was a child in Tower, just looking to fill that void with love and acceptance within. And I was starting to finally know and feel that in a pure and real sense. And even though I strayed off my path, God still had saved me in my absolute darkest hour multiple times. So fast forward, after I graduated high school, which I can probably say despite all the odds against me, you know, experimenting with drugs and such. I did succeed, I did graduate high school. It was tough, I had to make up like 70 hours of in-class time, but they let me get away with like 12, and they let me walk the stage. So. I met my son Nico's dad and fell in love. We had our son, and I met him like through partying, but you know, we kind of settled down. We recreationally did use once in a while when my mom would take the kids, and we would just play video games with friends for a weekend, clean the house. Otherwise, I was just an average super mom with 2 boys working full time. He was going to college. We had a great little family. But the problem was in the very beginning, when we were still partying, I did cheat on him once. And he never could forgive me, no matter how hard he tried to. So eventually, well, it would always get brought up when we would use for those weekends. And we would spend entire nights where I would have to constantly confess my sins to him. And no matter what I said, it was always wrong. It was drilled into me so hard how wrong I was. It progressively got worse until one day he snapped. And it became abusive. He was avoiding me and the kids, and he just went downward spiral hard. And it made me depressed, so I did the same thing. We broke up, but by then I was pretty addicted. And shortly after, meet another guy. Codependency, guys. Yeah, it's the moral of the story here. He was a drug dealer, not like, I don't know, he had a regular job too. When I used recreationally, I never met a dealer or that side of things, so it was all new to me. I thought I was in love with him too. We ended up getting pregnant with our daughter. My son Nico's dad did not want me to find happiness in another relationship, so he did get Isabella's dad fired from his regular job. And he had 3 prior 5th degrees, so it was harder for him to find a new job. So we resorted to selling drugs completely. The plan was never to do it forever, just long enough to make money or until a new job was obtained. I even tried to, of course, get jobs too, but we got greedy and we just kept throwing the money back in. We were very sick. It was ridiculous, the amount of money and things we had. It was so lonely, and we both wanted to stop, we just never could. I was going crazy and was so obsessed with the idea of having this man back that I originally fell in love with that I pushed and tried too hard, but I never did the things I was supposed to do. I made it about him and not my children or myself. Eventually, I was exiled from my apartment because he had found love in another woman. And I want to note that they are both currently married and thriving to this day. They are both people of God. Yeah, it's cool. Everybody's on great terms. We're like I say it's like my Jerry Springer family, you know what I mean? Like we're all cool. We're all cool. So we have no ill feelings towards each other, none of us do. It's crazy how we've all moved on and just grown up together. So I became homeless and started to sell drugs on my own just to make money to get my own place. And then I would stop and get a real job again and get my kids back living with me. All excuses I made because I never would admit that I had an actual problem and that, I don't know. The people got worse, the places got worse. I just made it worse for myself. I thought it would all come easy like before, and I did have it great at the beginning, dealing on my own, but I lost myself and forgot what I was doing it all for. And the lifestyle itself, when it seemed more glamorous, was honestly more addicting than the high for me. Drugs are anything but glamorous, and I did hit my rock bottom several times during my journey. I had hung out with a guy who, like farther in, to my addiction, I was hanging out with somebody who left me in an apartment in Virginia with a bunch of IV users. I was always told those people were trashy and I looked down on them. I'd never seen anybody use needles before. He just kind of left me there. The guy I was hanging with, that guy came back later, and everybody kind of fell asleep. And then those people in that apartment had robbed him, and he had blamed me for it. And he started beating me in the head. And I ran out of that apartment, and I remember hiding up the stairs in the hallway, trying to send texts to get someone to come get me out, but nobody ever came. And I always say he knocked a screw more loose in my brain because after he left, I went back to that apartment, to those people, and I asked them to help me shoot up for the first time. I refused to learn how to IV drug use at first because I didn't want to know how to do it myself. But then something happened to me that, I used to have a lot of shame and guilt from. Every once in a while I still do, but anyway. Sometimes I did what I needed to survive, but I never would try to use sex to fuel my addiction. I was still so in love with my daughter's father. I was very hooked on him. It was kind of pathetic really, but so there were many times I would reject somebody over and over, and a few times where they decided to just take me anyways. So shortly after getting into IV using, I met a guy who said he would help me. And he switched my syringe for his full of morphine. And I wasn't using opiates at this time at all. I was just meth. And dosed me so he could take advantage of me. And I thought I was going to die. And my vision was completely black. It happened to me also another time, but instead of morphine, it was a very, very large dose of meth. And instead of my vision going black, I couldn't even close my eyes. And I felt my brain literally scrambling and frying in my skull as I was unable to move. And this is something, besides Paul reading this last night to let me know what he thought, this is something I really haven't told anybody. But I feel like it's important, kind of, but for me. I have been trafficked once without my knowledge. A friend of mine had been arrested on a warrant for something minor and just needed bail. So I reached out to a family member of his, and she told me she had a friend who would help, but he had to take a drive somewhere and did not want to go alone, and asked if I would just ride with him. I didn't think anything of it, so I agreed, and instead he took me to his home in Kewaunee, which was very far away from my stomping grounds in Virginia. I didn't know anybody out that way. And in order to leave, I had to agree to have sex with him, which he recorded. And that girl got drugs for luring me to him. Towards the end of my addiction, I started dating a guy who had just gotten out of prison. It was so toxic. And one time I was coming down and he had just grabbed his prescription of Klonopin. He offered for me to try and I declined, but then the come down was so brutal that I finally gave in. And he told me only if I would take 3. I blacked out, I don't remember any of this. And, but he alleges, I kind of turned into a snake. So he dropped me off at a different ex-boyfriend's house and left me with 12 more. I guess I was supposed to sell them. I don't know, but at some point I ended up just taking all of them. And my ex-boyfriend and his dad brought me to the ER in Virginia and said I tried to kill myself. So I went to the 5th floor, got civilly committed, and they sent me to my first treatment in East Grand Forks. And it's still crazy to me that I did get civilly committed off that one overdose, a drug I don't even do. Because I have so many friends out there that have overdosed, died so many times, and then they're just, whoop. And they wouldn't let me go to the treatment in Virginia either. No matter where I went in this, they were like, no. But I knew so many other people that would just go to Virginia and then get out and use again. So it's almost like somebody was looking out for me. I knew, so, but that boyfriend who gave me the Klonopin came and picked me up for a week, and I ran from civil commitment. We went off again for a week before we kind of lost our minds. And it ended with me getting raped and beaten with an iPhone 7 Plus. This was terrifying for me. I'm an Android user. That is why. I'm the only one who has not brought a MacBook up here, just saying. So this was terrifying for me. I really thought this was going to be the end for me. And it was in this moment that I thought, I was very desperate, and I just I called out to God and I begged and prayed, don't let me die like this. My children can't lose me like this. It'll break them more, and I want to live. And shortly after, literally minutes later, someone I guess had called in an unrestrained child. I was the unrestrained child in the front seat of a car, crazy driver's car. Yeah, so we got pulled over, and he was doing sobriety tests, and he was going to get a DUI. And there were drugs in the car. And, I didn't really have to do this, but I didn't want to have any ties to this guy. I told the police where to find the drugs and to please arrest me. Get me away from this man. I needed to just be confined somewhere else. I never told them what he did to me. I went in with black eyes. And a fresh brand that he had given me a few days before. I still have the brand. I'm still thinking of a tattoo that I want to put over it. It's on my right butt cheek. I don't know how to say that in a tasteful way, but with a use a wrench and a torch. I stayed strong, and I refused to speak up about where these things really came from, because in the end I knew it was the better thing for me to do. I decided to attend the Bible study in Pine County, where I was given my first Bible, and we read the story of Job. And I was so moved by it, how he never gave up on God, no matter how much Satan tried to. Even Job lost everything, I want to be like Job. I do. And it felt like God had been speaking to me, and he pulled me out of my darkness when I finally surrendered and gave in to him and asked for his hand. He did not hesitate. And I know it in my heart and soul that he's the reason I'm still standing here today, over 6 years clean from meth and heroin. Because I ran from civil commitment, I was sent to a lockdown care facility for 3 months. Best thing for me. Because during this time, I was truly tested. My daughter had fallen into a bonfire, and I remember going absolutely insane trying to figure out how to escape. Because in this care facility, there was a person I knew from junior high who had tried to befriend, manipulate me, and guide my recovery into the opposite direction while inside the facility. And he had gotten out first to his halfway house, and he heard of it and called me. My family didn't want to tell me. Out of fear, I would go out and use drugs again, not really understanding where I was, that I couldn't really leave to do that. But he way over exaggerated it intentionally to set me into panic. And he had told me my daughter's face were burned, she looked all screwed up, all her pictures, everything. And my daughter did suffer major burns that needed skin grafts, but they were just, on her back shoulder, her like thigh and wrist area. She kind of like sat into the fire, her sandals, she tripped. So and she's doing good today. After my care facility, my counselors refused to let me come back to the range. So I ended up in Fargo Moorhead at Red River Recovery. So now I'm in Fargo. I'm starting over with barely anything. And I was still reading my Bible at this time. I worked really hard. I found a decent job. I got my own apartment. I did have Hep C and I got that cured. Yeah. I got off probation a year early, and I got to come back to visit sometimes to see 2 of my kids again. I still have not had any contact with my oldest. His family isn't ready to kind of open that with me yet, but we're trying, we're working towards it, or I am, I was very active in meetings and I did service work. I was doing really good. It was really good for me mentally to be out there. But after 2 years, I decided I wanted to be closer to family again. The idea of running into old friends terrified me. So I stayed away from meetings and people. And instead, I went to college. I isolated. I just focused on working. And I graduated top of my IT class, and I was the only girl, so that was a great feeling. Yeah. I started working at Minnesota Twist Drill. I was doing the things I needed to, but for the last 3 to 4 years, I felt a void since moving back to the range, just kind of festering in me, and I felt empty. So I sometimes go with my son Nico to his Catholic church. He's being raised Catholic. He goes to Marquette, Virginia. It didn't feel like it was my belonging at that church, but every time I've gone with him, I did feel sort of uplifted each time. And there was a time I wanted to convert with him, so I could share that with him and, learn more. I'm very inexperienced with this, so I'm really trying to find my place with God, But when I started to tell people this, they kind of laughed at me because no one has ever known me to be a woman of God because it's just not something I really talk about. And so, not being raised in that way or anything and not being known like that, I've always, deep down have believed, but I just kept that part of me locked inside selfishly. And I used to kind of almost feel like a form of shame about it because if I did try to make it known that I did, if I did try to make it known, I always like got shame about it. And that's not right. You should never feel ashamed to love and believe in God. Never, absolutely. And so, sorry, I lost my So, well, because I did that, I did that because there were so many godless people throughout my life. And all I ever wanted was to not feel alone and to feel accepted and loved. And, that belonging I see so many other people have around me, but I never realized that all along I really did have that. And it was within me. And it wasn't until I met Paul, who helped break down that barrier inside of me and encouraged me to embrace that feeling. When I started to, be interested in going to church and I put on the cross, he didn't say, oh, no way. He was like, okay, we're doing this. He was very encouraging to me. He didn't make me feel like I couldn't do it. I've met people who did believe in God, but never have I had a person in my life who really encouraged me with positivity to live the word of God in the way I see Paul do it every day, and it makes me feel whole. I found love and light again within me, and I want to continue this path and learn as much as I can to be the best image of God I possibly can be, so I can repay God for saving me when I was consumed by darkness and spread his light and word onto others. I'm very grateful. I had that void in me for so long just because, God did pull me out when I called to him. And I just went on with my day. I never put in the work and gave back to him. And so that's what I really want to do that now. So I'm grateful every day for the second chance I've been given. And I am over 6 years clean from my addictions, but truly, I feel like I'm just now starting over again on my path in the way I was always meant to. Yeah! But even when I was, self-sabotaging and guilt and shame, fueling my addictions and having all that odds stacked against me, I never really did truly give up. And I was still worthy of being saved. I wanted to live. I wanted to heal. And there were so many people who did not believe in me when I got sober, and some still don't. And one of the hardest things about my recovery in the beginning was having my daughter call me Sarah and not being allowed to know who I was. This alone almost shamed me back into darkness. But as I've grown though, I've come to realize that labels mean nothing. My daughter has a true connection with me, and I'm one of her favorite people. She's my mini, And me and her other mom, we're great. My daughter is so blessed to have, she basically has 3 moms. Not like that, but yeah. We're all happy Jerry's for your family. We've all come together and grown a lot, And so, but my daughter didn't know who I was when I first met her. So for being a baby to then meet me, it came natural. So anybody who doesn't have their kids involved, trusting God to give you strength and just believe that it comes natural, and it's not as scary as you think if anybody wanting to reconnect with their children. So, and also, never give up, never lose hope, trusting God, and no matter where you're at in life, you are worthy. So now I'll quote my life Bible verse here. 1 Corinthians 13:7. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. God has unconditional love for all of his children. This means that his love is limitless and never ending. When life becomes difficult or we stray from his path, God does not stop loving us. Through all of our challenges, he never gives up on us, which is why we should never give up on ourselves. And I forgot to say this in the beginning, but by the way, My name is Sarah, and I'm a learning, grateful believer in Jesus Christ. Yeah!
Very cool. Believe it or not, that was the first time giving a testimony. Group setting. So,